Brilliant. That's it. Okay, so thank you so much, Jessica, for your time today. Thank you for agreeing to do this podcast with us at QX Global Group, and I work in QX Accounting Services. So a very quick introduction is I'm Craig Chatwin. I'm responsible for the growth of QX Accounting Services across the UK and Ireland. And I'll let you introduce yourself, Jessica.
Yes, hi, Craig. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Jessica Rasmussen. I am the co-founder and CEO of Two Magnolias. We are a venture capital fund.
Brilliant. So let me just explain how I came to meet you then. I was attending the BVCA conference in Belfast, and I was super impressed because I saw you on the panel there at the event. And I was saying to my colleagues when I came back that you have to meet this guy. We have to do a recording because she was just phenomenal. Obviously you were passionate about what you do, but also passionate about Belfast and the opportunity Belfast provided you with. So what attracted you to do that BVCA event in Belfast then?
Well, it's quite interesting. We have been fascinated with Belfast longer than the moment that we met you. In fact, we first went to Northern Ireland soon after the Windsor Framework was announced, and when the UK government, Department of Business Trade, and Catalyst NI organised a sort of inbound investors trip. And so we, along with a bunch of other investors from, the mainland, if you like, from England, went across, and we listened to Kemi Badenoch at that time, announce the Windsor Framework. But we also connected with a number of founders. And that was in September 23, I think. And since that point, we have made two investments into early stage founders in Northern Ireland, which we're absolutely delighted with. But obviously, having made an investment there, we're committed to the region now, or devolved nation, and we have made several connections with local investors, but also angel groups who are very active in Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland is quite an insular ecosystem when it comes to investment, because they haven't had a lot of inbound external investment to date, but yep. that is changing. And actually, there's a very young population in Northern Ireland, but a very entrepreneurial population as well. So having made two investments, our commitment is steadfast. And, I was just there, last week or the week before last, seeing, other founders, and we're looking at that opportunity, or looking at opportunities there very seriously.
Yeah, I mean, we've got clients in Northern Ireland as well, and what I picked up on when you were doing your panel discussion was that the founders in Northern Ireland have to think globally from the very outset. Obviously, if they was just targeting people in Northern Ireland, their marketplace was very small, so they've got this global mindset already, which is perfect for an investor like yourself, I imagine.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, Two Magnolias invests in early stage businesses in the UK that are sort of built at home, if you like, but have the ability to scale globally. So solutions that are globally scalable. The beauty about Northern Ireland is that it's 2.5 million people. So the consumer base is relatively small, which is why many investors actually avoid Northern Ireland, because I think it's a small geography. What is the growth potential? But actually, what it does is it forces entrepreneurs to think globally immediately. And what do I mean by global in their eyes? I mean, selling into England, Scotland, and Wales is the first thing. The second thing is, because of the Windsor Framework, they have access to the US market, which is why you're seeing many US firms actually set up in Northern Ireland. For example, Bank of America last week announced a new operation centre in Belfast, employing 1,000 people. So, it's not just small US companies. You're talking about, one of the top 5 largest banks in the world investing in Northern Ireland. So we think it's a perfect platform.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think that I came away from that conference thinking the same as you. What's really important, I think, in terms of if we've got accountants that are looking to secure VC funding, I wanted them to see what I saw at that conference. I wanted them to meet you, and this podcast is a perfect way for them to be able to do that. But tell us a little bit more about Two Magnolias, because it's yeah. I'll let you explain why it's special.
Well, Two Magnolias, as I said, is an early stage venture capital fund. We invest in under two sectors. One is the transformational economy, which is essentially old economy problems being solved by sort of new technologies, and health equity or human health, and in all its forms. So why does Two Magnolias exist? Well, my co-founder and I, Marie, we left Bank of America in 2019 for a variety of different reasons. But actually, one of our main focuses was private markets. We had worked a combined 50 years in banking and in asset management, and we felt it was time for a change. Having worked in sort of big global capital flow businesses, we thought, what is really happening with the flow of capital to smaller businesses in the UK? And actually, what we did is we started angel investing. We started investing small amounts of our own money just to see what the ecosystem was like. And then we quickly realized the huge number of gaps that existed within VC and PE in the UK. The largest gap we saw was around women and around female entrepreneurs, but also female investors. So I know these statistics are widely shared, but I'm going to share them again. I mean, in 2023, I think it was 2.5% of all venture capital funds went to sole female founders. In 2024, that number dropped to 1.8%. And only, I mean, less than 1%, I think it's sort of 0.85% of capital went to ethnically diverse founders.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing. The other thing we noticed was that 87% of venture capital dollars is controlled by one demographic. And that is through the entirety of the seniority ranks within VC and PE firms. So you see some VC firms with little or zero female investors on their investment committee.
Yeah.
And in the UK, there are less than 23 women with significant stakes in a venture capital fund as sitting as GPs. Marie and I are two of them. So you can imagine then the absolute polarity of the fact that there are no or very few female investors that control capital, and there's very little capital going to sole female founders. The numbers do increase slightly with male co-founders. So if female founders are, build a business with a male co-founder, those numbers go up to between, depending on how you measure it, anywhere between 17 and 20%. So they increase significantly. So that was one of the biggest opportunity gaps that we saw, that women at both parts of the capital stack were just underrepresented. And this is one of our key focuses with regards to Two Magnolias. Even though we have our sectors very clearly defined, the lens is on underrepresented founders. The second thing that we noticed was a very large dearth of investment. I think 60% of all venture capital investment flows into London. And so that leaves 40% for the rest of the UK. The UK is a big place with a lot of activity happening in the devolved nations, and obviously in the northeast and the northwest, but also down south, on the south coast, or all of the counties down in the southwest and the southeast. So and of course the Midlands, which I know you're from the Midlands, and Marie's from the Midlands, so we kind of were very focused on the Midlands. So we can't, and I mean, it's quite interesting. I went to the University of Warwick, and Marie went to the University of Sheffield, so we kind of grew up in those environments also.
Yeah.
And we just thought this is an opportunity for us, because we don't believe that all of the best entrepreneurs in the UK sit in London. We just don't believe that.
Yeah.
But what we do know is that entrepreneurs outside of London struggle with many things. They struggle with networks,
Mm.
their ability to access capital. They struggle a little bit with confidence, because there's a bit of a sort of, London and the sort of southeast kind of small kind of, where, slightly arrogant, I think,
Mm.
down here. And I think they feel that, they don't have the same level of accessibility to capital, or they don't have capital equity.
Yeah.
And we want to bring that to the rest of the UK.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. I mean, you were in Belfast and talking about Belfast really positively, and why that was an interesting area for you. But I love the diversity, and it comes across on your website as well. And when you're speaking about, your two female founders of the VC firm Two Magnolias, but you're passionate about addressing this imbalance. And I know when I was at the BVCA conference, at the summit, sorry, a couple of weeks ago, they were talking about, there was a session talking about the the imbalance that exists and the work to be done to kind of redress that. So I think if you are a accountant out there with a very, very promising firm has some kind of female involvement in it, then I think that would be a really good fit for your firm as well. But lots to do on the kind of diversity side. And I think we were talking before about how I think there's analysis being done on the FTSE owned companies that have a very good diverse board, and the impact that has on their profitability and the success of that firm. It's so positive. You think, well, why aren't more firms just doing it? And I think there is a big correction on the FTSE 100, but not in the venture capital PE world yet. But at least people are talking about it, and at least they're recognizing the potential.
But
So
Craig, I will sort of, yeah, I think you're right. But from what we understand, and remember, we're new kids on the block relatively. We started our VC firm in 2021. We did a first close in 22. We did a final close on our first fund last year, and we're just raising our second fund. So we're relatively new kids on the block. This specific conversation about imbalance has been happening for 10 years.
yeah,
So, and the same thing with the FTSE 100. This conversation has been happening for longer, for over 20 years with
yeah,
regards to the FTSE, yet it's still not solved.
no,
And so we have to sort of go back to the root cause, and it's all about, in our mind, the decision making. You have to actually make firm decisions, and you have to stick by them. And
mm,
I know that it's an unpopular commentary to say have quotas, make sure that you are targeting people, but you have to do that to
yeah,
target change. So, for example, in our first fund, we said we would have a lens on underrepresented founders. 50% of our portfolio companies in our fund one are female, 41% are ethnically diverse.
mm,
That completely, you know, shatters all the
yeah,
sort of trends within VC. But
yeah,
why is our portfolio built like that? It's because we absolutely put targets on it.
yeah,
In our second fund, we've actually increased the targets for underrepresented founders to 75%, and we are
brilliant.
publicly stating that. So
Yeah,
does that mean, so many funds might say to you, in response, they might say, yes, well, then you're not really a returns driven fund, you're compromising your returns. We completely reject that. We
yeah,
completely reject. And statistically, we know the return profile of female and ethnically diverse founders
yeah,
versus, the rest.
yeah.
Um, and so we reject it. We in fact we think that's more returns focused, actually,
Yeah,
because of your point on having a
yeah.
balanced, diverse portfolio.
Yes, it's statistically proven, isn't it, that if you do have so it's not in debate. So I would agree with you. I think your 75% target increases the potential success of what you're trying to do, would be my opinion. But I know so I'm really pleased that you're addressing that. The regional nature of what you're doing as well. We met in Belfast, but I went to all of the BVCA regional conferences, and what I picked up on is the passion that the speakers had about the region they were representing. So the speakers from Leeds were passionate about what was going on in Leeds, and there was a particular focus on that area, and there was almost like they specialized. There was a very kind of industrial focus in Leeds, and was probably an industrial focus in the Midlands as well. Especially when I was growing up, it was very industrial focused. But it's those different specialisms. They're so passionate about it that I'm really pleased that you're not just, and I wouldn't say if you were just focused on London, we'd talk about why that was of benefit to your firm. But I love the fact that you're looking regionally as well, and looking at opportunities across the Great Britain. So in terms of your values, so your values are not just about obviously we want the firms to be successful, but climate change is something you recognize on your website as key. And again, so you're looking for firms that are has a good kind of balance to the firm, but also ethically kind of positioned in a way that you support as well. That's yeah.
I mean, we do. I mean, we as I said, our two pillars are sort of new solutions, new technologies, and health equity. What we say now is that, and I know that there's a big rhetoric around sustainability, and there is a big movement away from many investors about looking at sustainable solutions for the health of the planet. We actually think that the new generation of entrepreneurs, they take that as a base case, Craig.
Yeah.
They don't build businesses that, reject the planet, at all, because they've grown up with this view that, we have to protect our ecosystem. So actually, we think that sustainability is more mainstream than the public realize, which is why our pillar around sustainability is no longer called sustainability, it's called the transformational economy, because we are talking about new materials which can replace plastic. These types of companies are being built by young people. We're talking about synthetic bio, proteins made in the lab, not by rearing huge amounts of cattle, which have an issue on the sort of methane content, of and increased greenhouse gases. So what I'm saying is that actually it's very mainstream and it's very broad based. So we don't feel that we're out on a limb at all. We think climate change is actually part and parcel of what people, but it's not, we don't even have to say it. And in fact, we think that's a good thing, because when you say things like climate change, it's divides people now. So we don't use that language. We just have it as a base case. And all of our portfolio companies, if they receive investment from Two Magnolias, have to go through mandatory ESG assessment. And all portfolio companies in our second fund will have greenhouse gas mitigation from day one. And we have the two companies that we're working with and partnering with, and they will be the providers of the CO2 emission analysis and the tonnage metrics and the mitigation, and we have the ESG platform as well. That is a base case. No company will go through Two Magnolias without that.
I think that's great to hear, because obviously it should be when it should not be something you choose. It should be as a base case. So I'm really pleased that that's kind of the new standard, and I'm really pleased that young people are just it's not even a debate. It's already embedded into what they're trying to do.
I mean, I do think just very quickly on that point, I do think there is still there is an unsolved friction between what is happening with new technologies, with what is happening with AI and deep tech and data centers, and the need for huge amounts of energy to power these data centers and cooling systems, etc. I think there's still a friction between the fact that we need that to power AI and quantum technologies, and the solutions that can help mitigate the energy needs, but also the cooling systems that are needed to protect these data kind of centers. But that will come. that will come. And
Yep.
I know that there are many people who are working on just that. And in fact, the Chinese get criticized for a lot of things, but the Chinese have been one of the few countries that actually have come up with solutions for, I don't know if you noticed, but in March, April this year, the Chinese were the first to drop a data center into some offshore water. I
Right.
think it was a huge, sort of part of their, I think it was a lake or it was offshore, just
Yep.
offshore. And
Yep.
they dropped it in to form natural cooling so that they
Right.
didn't have to use air conditioning and etc. And it was the first experiment of
Yeah.
dropping a data center, which was encased and wasn't going to infiltrate the
Yep.
ocean, to
Yep.
ensure that it was a natural cooling system. So,
Brilliant.
right. So there are people who are working,
Yeah.
at pace.
Yeah.
Um, to
Yeah,
solve these
it's
problems.
that's good to hear actually, because that is the trade-off that you're hearing, isn't it? That's yeah. So talk. One thing I'm keen to hear from you, and for people to hear directly from you, is that when you provide funding, then is it more of, so one thing they get from you is the experience that you've got. So when you provide funding into a company, do you give them the benefit of your experience in terms of, are they looking at new markets? So quite often when I go to these BVCA conferences, they do the award ceremony as well, and when the companies are recognized, they always recognize the funders as to giving them like insights into new markets they wouldn't have had themselves. So is that a part of what you do as Two Magnolias then? It's not just the funding, you help the founders realize things they maybe not even thought about before.
Well, I mean, what we do, what Marie and I do, I mean, we're operators, so we can give them the benefit of our experience and also the experience that we've had in working at very large banks and very large institutions for many years, but also having invested now for the last sort of 5 years and seeing the classic red flags and mistakes that founders do. What
Yep.
we also do is we wrap our founders with advisors that we have. So we have two advisory boards, one in health equity and one in sort of sustainability solutions, transformational economy.
Yep.
And we give our founders access to these advisory boards, and we sit as either board seats or observers on these company boards to
Yep.
ensure that we're always there and we're in constant dialogue. What we also bring is a huge network of our peer group of investors
Yep.
that are looking at um, similar early stage companies. So when they start to raise again, we can handhold them through that process and we can introduce them to our peer group. So, I think that we're not really following, Craig, the traditional, I don't even know what that is, by the way, because it's so opaque.
Yeah.
We knew we had to build our own venture capital fund because we knew, Marie and I knew that we wouldn't be allowed to step inside an incumbent
Yep.
because, that it's a very protected ecosystem.
Yep.
So we built our own and we built it with our own rules. So we're transparent, we're open, we're inclusive. And we are very happy to open our network to anybody that's within our portfolio.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Okay, and one of the that's great to hear, and that's something that I think is important to. So I've heard other people say they had 6 or 7 firms they could have worked with, but they picked the one where their values aligned. And
Yes.
I truly believe that when they hear you speak, they will be very keen to kind of have you as a partner because of your values and the way you've set Two Magnolias up. So I'm hoping that does happen for you, and you just go on from strength to strength.
Thank
The
you.
last thing,
We
the
hope
last
so.
thing, yeah, the last thing I was hoping you would maybe talk about is what does the future look like for you then? Is there any kind of big opportunities coming up that you're seeing? Any exciting on the horizon within the areas that you operate?
Well,
Anything
I
you
mean,
want to
I
share?
think, I think from a micro perspective, I think the amount of IP still coming out of the UK universities is extraordinary. I
Yep.
think that the UK is a real, um, it has a very flourishing entrepreneurial spirit. I think the universities are strong, and I think students within them now are being given the space to develop their ideas. And I think many universities now have set up entrepreneur labs or accelerators or incubators, or the research students or the PhDs are being encouraged to, when they have developed their ideas or thoughts, to either register companies or work with the university to kind of do that very initial MVP funding.
Yeah,
And I think that's alive and well in the UK, and I think it's much should be celebrated.
brilliant.
And that from a micro perspective, also Two Magnolias, the UK government's 10-year industrial strategy, which was released earlier this year, hits all the relevant points that I think venture capital is looking at, whether it's green tech or health tech or advanced manufacturing or AI or quantum or these are the big broad based arrows that people are
Yep.
focusing on. And I think that industrial strategy is aligned with venture and private equity, and I think that's pretty much aligned with what the universities are also developing, and it's full scope.
Yeah.
We've invested in 2 advanced manufacturing companies, but we're not an advanced manufacturing VC. But they fall within our pillars of
Yeah.
health and of sustainability or new materials. So I think the scope is broad, and I think from a micro level, we're filling the gaps. And I think there are something like 20% of all UK graduates now want to start a business at some stage, which I think
Yep.
is brilliant for the
Yeah.
UK. And I think this is how we are really going to compete. We need new ideas, and we need new ideas at scale, and we need venture capital funds to put money into that. But from a macro perspective, I think there is a huge opportunity in the UK. I know things are difficult, and I know the rhetoric is difficult and the politics is difficult right now. But if you look through that, some of the things that are happening, particularly the Mansion House Accord, which is pushing pension funds to release at least 5% of their capital to put
Yeah.
into alternatives or property, or to sort of higher growth but higher risk assets,
Yeah.
will absolutely fuel the venture capital ecosystem in the UK. And we need capital, domestic capital,
Mm.
to increase valuations, to increase speed to market, to increase the go to market, or reduce the length of time for
Yeah.
companies that go to market, very much like they do in the US. And
Yeah.
I cannot think of a better nation to sort of meet the speed at which the US is moving at their own pace. I mean, I think
Yeah.
the UK has it all, from
Yeah.
regulation, from law, from universities. So it is that release of capital
Yeah.
from the endowments, from the pension funds, that will tip the balance. And I think over the next 5 years, that is the biggest win that we have to look forward to.
Brilliant. So it's exciting time on a macro level and a micro level, which is great. I'm really pleased the universities are all kind of developing their own kind of entrepreneur centres as well. That's fantastic news. So how do people get in touch with you then? If somebody wants to find out more information about Two Magnolias, and they've got the accountants we work with have a very promising company that would benefit from VC funding, how would they get in touch with you?
Well, I mean, the first thing we always say to everybody is to go to our website and first check if you as a company fall within our pillars, because I think that's the most important thing. We do get a lot of incoming from people who need funding but are who sort of ignore that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, from our perspective, we are very strict with our investment thesis.
Yeah.
Just because we have a very strong lens on underrepresented founders, and we do have these quotas, we of course invest in other demographics. So we invest in men very happily. We want a balanced portfolio. So that should not put anybody off, but you need to fall within our investment pillars. Transformational economy, it's all laid out, and health. And then there is a form on our website. So please go in and fill the form in, and then you will come into our funnel, and then we will, take you down the funnel. If you are too early, we will be transparent about that. But we do follow a number of companies, and we've been following some companies for a couple of years to see their progress, but we're watching them.
Yeah, yeah.
And there will come a time when we will invest.
No, that's fantastic. Well, honestly, Jessica, it's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you for giving us your time to do this podcast today. It's lovely to hear you speak today, as much as it was to hear you speak on the panel in Belfast as well. So I wish you and Marie all the success with Two Magnolias, and hopefully see you at an event very soon.
Of course. Thank you very much for having us, Craig. All the
Thanks,
best.
Jessica. See you.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.